A recent survey revealed a shocking statistic. Seniors are asked what is their greatest fear in life. You would have thought they'd said losing their health or maybe dying, but it wasn't. It was running out of money. And so in this video, I'm going to share with you the two reasons why people have this fear of running out of money and how you can avoid those two mistakes. All right, so our first big mistake is this: not planning, meaning not financially planning for unexpected medical expenses. Do you realize that because of our age and our gender and our family genetics, that it is almost impossible for us to live our life at this age without having some type of a chronic condition? In fact, they say right now that those above the age of 60, 95% of all people have at least one chronic condition, and 80% of all people have at least two chronic conditions. Certainly, there are some who have multiple chronic conditions. So it is going to happen. So it's really not a matter of if we're going to have them. It is truly when this is going to happen in our life. So let me just show you some things. Just recently out, a very interesting study talking about those that are 65 and above chronic conditions. Notice 12% of all people that are Medicare eligible right now have Alzheimer's or dementia. Depression 16%, heart failure 15%. This would be very serious congestive heart failure. Chronic kidney disease, meaning they lost the function of their kidneys, they're on dialysis, or may actually had a kidney transplant, 1 out of every 4. Diabetes, of course, those two stats certainly go together. Ischemic coronary heart disease, improper blood flow to the heart, resulting in coronary disease. Arthritis 35%, obesity 42%, high cholesterol over 51%, and then of course hypertension, high blood pressure 60%. And so again, 80% of all people have at least two of these kind of conditions. And so the point is this: it's very expensive for us to be able to manage these kind of healthcare issues, especially if they result in severity as we age and they get more intense. So what can happen if we have difficulties with our chronic conditions? Well, the first thing, we can certainly be hospitalized, and we would call this just a normal inpatient admission that you have. This is something, of course, that Medicare Part A is going to cover. We certainly have some financial responsibility. We have a deductible this year. The Medicare Part A deductible is $1,630. They say right now that the average hospital stay is about 5.5 days. All right. Now, we don't like to be in a hospital a long period of time, but certainly something like this is not going to break the bank for most people. Most people can afford this. However, what happens is if we have multiple chronic conditions and a traditional hospital is typically they want us to get on out of the hospital. A lot of times people then have to leave these hospital stays, and they actually have to go to what's called a long-term acute care hospital. And these are specifically designed to take care of us on a longer basis. Again, up here 5, 6 days. Down here, this could be anywhere from 25 to 50 to 75 days. And so I want to talk just briefly about these and kind of show you what can happen financially if we have to go to a long-term care acute hospital. So real quickly, let me just read this to you. Long-term care acute hospitals provide care for patients with multiple serious medical conditions requiring a longer stay than encouraged in a traditional hospital, the 5 to 6 day stay. These long-term care acute hospitals help to facilitate prompt discharge of clinically complex patients. So we're going to move from the hospital to this type of care. Patients receive extended periods of care before they are well enough to return home or go to rehab. Long-term care hospitals are certified acute care hospitals. The average length of stay must be 25 days or greater, and there must be a need for intensive medical care. This article goes on to say a broad range of admission criteria exists, with the most common being mechanical ventilation weaning, intravenous antibiotics, and complex wound care. Long-term care hospitals are held to the same accreditation and regulatory standards as traditional hospitals. A wide range of clinically complex services are going to be offered. All right, and so I want to talk about what happens in these long-term care facilities, but I want to do real quickly, before we get into that little graph that I have here, if someone does not recover in this kind of a situation, sometimes then they go ahead and are have to be admitted to a long-term care facility. Okay, and so the difference is here. Up here, they were put in because there was a very high likelihood of recovery. Medically necessary services, a high likelihood of recovery. So again, Medicare A is going to participate here. But when we get down here, we talk about long-term care. Now we're talking about someone that is not going to recover. And so what the concern now would be custodial needs. Custodial needs. Now, let me explain just real quickly about custodial needs. Custodial needs means this. This is someone that needs assistance with bathing. They cannot bathe themselves. In other words, the personal hygiene is now going to be a problem for them. Continence issues. This is someone that has problems with managing bowels. And so that would be a custodial need. Very important, but not necessarily medically necessary. Now it's just custodial. So we have bathing, continence, dressing. Maybe they've had a stroke and they cannot button up buttons, or they're not able to pull clothes on or off over their head. Anyone that cannot feed themselves, so eating could be a custodial need. Anyone that has toileting issues, meaning they cannot get on the toilet or off the toilet without substantial assistance. Transferring, this is mobility issues, this is custodial. They're in a wheelchair and they can't get into a bed or a chair without assistance. So my whole point is these are very important needs, but they're considered to be custodial and they're not covered by Medicare. All right, and so that's why we have to have some type of a plan for these unexpected medical expenses. None of us really are planning to need long-term care, but the stats are over half of all people will sometime in their lifetime need some type of a long-term care situation. All right, and so that's what I'm saying. This can really be very detrimental for people when it comes to their finances, because if they have not done proper preparation, they're going to have to pay out of pocket, and it could truly be substantial and could truly cause people, in fact, many people are actually driven into bankruptcy because of the long-term care situations. All right, so let's keep going. Hey, if you found this video helpful and if you want to see more Medicare information just like it, then go below, right below the video, and you can give us a thumbs up as well as subscribe to our channel. And every time I put a new video, which is about 2 every week, you'll be notified of that video, and others just like you who need this vital information will get it as well. There's actually 4 of them. The first one would be just simply to have your long-term care taken care of in a home setting. That's where, of course, most people would like to be. Now, the issue here is, depending on the extent of care that you need, if you're still at home, then normally this is going to be a loved one that's typically unpaid to be able to take care of you. Again, the stress that goes along with being a caregiver for someone that has these chronic issues and a lot of the medical problems that go along with that. But even if we were to go out and get some assistance, it can still be very expensive. They say right now for someone that is at home and they're going to get some kind of an assistance to be able to stay in the home, it's costing right now about $4,000 to $5,000 a month. So that's about $60,000 a year for you to be able to stay in your home to get your long-term care needs. Second option would be community-based. Now, what this means, this is someone that's probably at home, but they may be going to something like an adult daycare. In other words, they're doing some things outside the home. Meaning they're still in the community to get some of their services and their support. Again, there's going to be some out-of-pocket expenses here. It could be around, again, that range of about $4,000 to $5,000. But again, it's community-based. And this is someone that can really still live somewhat independently, but they're going to need some assistance with those activities of daily living. And then that takes us to assisted living today. Now, assisted living facility, this is someone that is still somewhat independent. Maybe not totally, but they're basically able to manage their own finances. They're able to manage their own medications. Probably still able to cook on their own, and also maybe still do some of their laundry kind of situation, whereas they are somewhat independent. And so they go to an assisted living facility. Now, I'd say right now these are going to be in the neighborhood of about $6,000 a month. So we're talking about $72,000 for the year. So again, very expensive situation as well. And then we get to the thing that's the most expensive, and this is, of course, going to be a nursing home. Now, right now, they say the average nursing home stay is somewhere between $8,000 to $9,000, okay, on a monthly basis. So what do we talk about? We're talking about well over $100,000 if someone's going to be in that nursing home. Okay, so this is someone that cannot live independently. In other words, these custodial needs, they're not able to even really really survive without some kind of a substantial assistance. And that's why they find themselves in the nursing home. Okay? And so let's talk about then, if we end up finding ourselves in a nursing home situation where it's costing us $100,000 a year, how can we pay for this? Number one, we can self-pay. And there's some people who have to do this because, again, they didn't do proper planning, so they're going to have to spend through their resources. I cannot tell you in my career in this how many times I've heard of people having $1 million or sometimes even more, and all that money was gone to the nursing home as this person continued to live a long time and really exhausted all their money. So that's what is going to happen in a self-pay situation. Okay, but some people choose to do that. And so, but you have to have a really large nest egg. In fact, I read something recently, Fidelity put this out. They said the average person should have $315,000 per person, okay, set aside for long-term care needs per person. So if you're married, that means you should have set aside $630,000 of your assets that's totally dedicated to the possibility of you needing long-term care. All right, so that would be a self-pay situation. Another way we can get help is through the government. Now, we already know that Medicare, what? Medicare is not going to pay anything, but we do know of Medicaid. In fact, they say now that about 50% of all nursing home bills are paid through Medicaid. Medicaid is federally funded as well as a state-funded program. But the problem with Medicaid is this. You have to have very limited resources and limited income to actually qualify for Medicaid. And so if someone has resources, what they have to do is they actually have to spend down all their own money. Medicaid is not going to jump in and pay anything until you're basically almost broke. Okay, and so you got to spend all those assets down, or if you had transferred them 5 years prior, then that's a possibility as well. But again, you got to do the proper planning. But again, people on Medicaid are now limited. I think most states right now will allow you to have maybe $2,000 to $3,000 in total in the bank, and your income, most of it's going to go to them as well. You may get to keep a few $100s, and that is it. All right, and so people find themselves in a situation where they have to sell homes and get rid of their assets before they're actually going to qualify for Medicaid. All right, plus then Medicaid makes all the decisions as well. That's what happens when we talk about the government being involved. You're really not able to choose the facility you want to go to. It's the Medicaid system that's actually going to do that. All right, and the third option we have, and that would be some type of an insurance product. And I'm going to close out with this on this particular aspect of it, but I want to let you know there's actually two different types of things that people are doing today. You actually can get what is called a traditional long-term care policy. Traditional long-term care, and this would be going to an insurance company and saying, I'd like to have a daily nursing home benefit. I want this to cover me for 3 years or 5 years or unlimited. And so you set up a policy, and if you actually have a long-term care need, which these are triggered by you needing substantial assistance with 2 of those 6 of those activities of daily living, right? The bathing, the continence, the dressing, the eating, the toileting, the transferring, cognitive issues, these kind of things. If you have 2 of those 6 ADLs where you need substantial assistance, that triggers that traditional long-term care policy. Now the issue is they're very difficult to qualify for unless you qualify, got it earlier in life, and they're also very expensive as well. But again, traditional long-term care is certainly an option. Now what many people today, they're doing something that's different, and what they're doing is they're doing what we would call hybrid long-term care. Meaning what we're doing some kind of a life insurance product that has a long-term care benefit attached to it, all right? And so these are becoming very, very popular. In fact, I'd say for all people who are really planning for long-term care, I'd say probably 60 to 70% of all people are doing it in a hybrid fashion versus traditional long-term care, all right? And so I'm going to just close this segment out of the video just by talking about the hybrid policies. All right, so with the hybrid policies, we basically have 2 different ways in which we can do this. We have what is called a linked benefit life insurance, linked benefit, and then we have life insurance policies with riders. All right. Now, if someone is fairly healthy and they think they're never going to need long-term care, which none of us know that for sure, they would probably lean towards getting a life policy just with some riders. But someone says, hey, the reality of me having a long-term care need is very high, possibly maybe because of mom or dad did or whatever situation is, probably would go in this kind of a situation here. And so if I think I may never need it, this may work, but if I think I could, then this would probably truly be a better option. So the focus here would be the linked benefit life. So let me kind of explain this real quickly. What this means is this is someone that says, I believe this is going to happen. I'd actually like to have about $500,000 set aside for long-term care. Remember, Fidelity said you better have at least $315,000 per person. So this is someone says, I'm going to put $500,000 aside. And so what they would do, they can either pay monthly or they can fund it, but they actually would put in about $100,000. And that would give them, and this of course would be someone that's 55 or 60 years old doing this, and they could set up a policy that actually would pay out about $500,000 in long-term care benefit, and then the death benefit in this scenario would be anywhere from about $150,000 to $175,000. So it does have life insurance component built within it, but the emphasis here primarily is going to be on the long-term care benefit, wanting to have a very strong one. Now, if someone wants to do a life insurance policy with a rider, again, thinking, I may never need this. So what their focus would be, they would buy a life insurance policy that may have a death benefit of, let's say, $500,000. And then what they're able to do is they're able to use about 80 to 90% of that for long-term care. So that would give them about $400,000 to about $400,000, $400,000 to $450,000, okay, that they could actually use for long-term care if they had 2 of those 6 activities of daily living that they needed substantial assistance with. Then that would trigger that rider then with that life insurance policy, and then again they'd exhaust that amount, and then the remaining balance of that then would go to their beneficiaries at death. All right, so that's the way they work. So why is it that this is more of a popular option here today? Let me just point this out, and then we'll move on then to our second big mistake. But the first one here is choice of care setting. Well, the nice things is these are just going to pay you an amount of money, and so you get to choose your care. If you go on Medicaid, you're not choosing your care. Whatever Medicaid beds would be available for you, that's what you're going to have to use. But not so here. You can choose the care. You can use this money at home, community-based, assisted living, as well as a true long-term care facility. So you get to make that choice. Number 2, you have fixed premiums. One of the difficulties with traditional long-term care insurance is they go up in price. But when you have a life insurance policy, it's going to be a fixed premium that you would pay for the rest of your life. You never have to worry about that premium going up. You also have premium flexibility. We have a lot of people today that actually would just soon just do a lump sum. They'll say, as this person did here, I want $500,000 available to me, and so we can put $100,000 into account and pay that lump sum, and then you can use that benefit if you ever need it. If you don't, then of course, then you would have the death benefit that would go to your family. And then number 4, easier to qualify. Traditional long-term care policies, you don't have to be perfectly healthy, but very, very close. Not so with these kind of policies because, again, it's built upon a life insurance chassis. And so there's certainly qualifications, but not near as difficult to qualify for these as you would with that traditional long-term care policy. So much, much easier to qualify. So these are ways in which you can fund it. And so certainly you don't want to have to be responsible for this self-pay. It could truly take all your assets. You certainly wouldn't want to have to go on Medicaid if you can avoid that. Why? Because you no longer have the choice. You had to spend all your money down. There's no legacy, no inheritance for your children. And so that's why we would say doing one of these hybrid insurance policies to cover this that's very, very expensive will keep you from making that big mistake. Hey, Medicare can be very confusing. In fact, people make mistakes all the time because of how confusing it is. So what I've done is I've actually created a Medicare, notice this, Essentials Workshop, where you have the opportunity to really learn everything that you need to know about Medicare so that you can make Medicare decisions. There are thousands of people every month that watch this workshop, and we get lots of reviews saying that this is something that really, really was helpful to them. And so what you can do is down here below in the comments section, you'll see where it says pinned comment. At the very top of those pinned comments is a link. And you click on that link, what we're going to do is we're going to give you free access to this Medicare Essentials Workshop. And we want you to watch it because we don't want you to make any mistakes. That brings us then to the second most common mistake that people make, and that would be just simply mismanagement of their retirement finances. Let's get into some of the details about this. First off, in order to manage your finances properly, the first question you're going to have to address is really what are your retirement priorities? So as we prepare for retirement and retirement, what really is most important to you? Oddly enough, one of the most important things to people is this. they are trying to do everything they can to avoid running out of money. In fact, there was a recent survey done, and retirees asked what's their biggest fear. And you would think it would be their health, dying, but it wasn't. It was this one right here, actually running out of money. Now, the problem, if this is the only priority, is that sometimes people can have a very conservative portfolio that is not going to last during their retirement years. So yes, it's certainly a concern, but you can't be so conservative in your portfolio decisions if this is your only goal. That could be a little bit dangerous. Number two, some people, to just simply maintain their lifestyle. They just want to continue to live like they've been living. Of course, now we have no job, we have no paycheck, and so we've got to be very wise about what we're spending. And so maintaining a lifestyle is certainly a fine goal. And the reason for that is because most people are not interested in moving, in with their children or having to go back to work. They just want to maintain the lifestyle that they have. So therefore, we have to have proper planning to make sure that is going to be possible. Number three would be legacy and charity for some. And these are people that have larger portfolios, higher income, and they know they're not going to worry. They're not worried about running out of money, but they do want to make sure that they are able to leave sufficient money behind for children or grandchildren or charitable organizations that they're really interested in. Okay, so here, certainly we're going to have some growth mindset as well. And then lastly, some people say, hey, I'm going to spend every penny. I'm not really concerned about my children. I'm going to spend all their inheritance. And we kind of say this with tongue in cheek, but what happens with this goal here, if that's what they want to do, we have no idea how long we're going to live. And so sometimes people with this goal can overspend. And so again, we're going to have to be wise. So the point is you need to identify what your retirement priorities are. Let's talk about number two. What will your retirement cost you? Now, think with me, if you will. When you got ready to buy a home, or let's say you're going to buy an automobile, there's two questions that you ask, and that is, what does it cost, and how am I going to pay for it? Okay, and so really that's what we're talking about here. What is it going to cost you to be in retirement for the next 25, 30 years? There's a price tag on that, and how are you going to make that possible? That's really the questions that we're asking. So first off, as you look at your retirement, you're going to have to come up with some type of a budget. You're not wanting to go back to work to make more money. You're not going to try to work harder now. You're going to have to live within your means. However, that means looks, you're going to live within it. And so as we talk about a budget, there's two things that we focus on. The first one would be living expenses. And I know this is just real common sense, but it is important to make sure that you have a budget, that you have a plan. And so living expenses would be money that really is non-discretionary. These are things that you don't have a lot of control over. This would be your housing and your utilities. This is going to be, just your normal everyday living expenses that you're going to have to be responsible for. This would also include any debt. If you happen to have debt, this is going to be taxes as well. That would be whether personal property or real estate taxes or the income taxes you're responsible for, as well as, very important at our age, healthcare expenses also. Okay, so we're mindful of these kinds of things, medical and healthcare expenses. So we put together those things that are non-discretionary. What's it going to cost you to live? Regardless of what happens in life, you're going to spend this kind of money. The second aspect of a budget would be kind of things that are more non-discretionary, and this would be what we call lifestyle expenses. Again, non-discretionary. These are things that you do have control over, and so these would be things like travel, hobbies, maybe some luxury things that maybe you're wanting to purchase, or vacations, those kinds of things that would be luxurious. It could be money that you want to spend on your children or your grandchildren. All those things certainly are important, but you're going to have to budget for those type of items. And so you have to also be aware that if you have money in the market and the markets are really down, this is going to be a time where probably not going to be selling anything or taking withdrawals from, because these are things that we really don't have to have necessarily. We have to have this, okay? That's for sure. But the point is, as you put together your budget, be sure to include everything, because there's sometimes people forget about this right here, and then when they don't include that, then it could be very possible for them to not budget properly. Therefore, they're maybe overspending or sometimes even underspending, meaning they really have a nice retirement nest egg, and yet they do not allow themselves to have things that they really would like to have because they have not looked at the numbers, and they're afraid of spending, again, too much money. All right, so the point is, let's put together a budget including both of these items. Now, the third question we have to ask ourselves, if we don't don't want to fall into the trap of mismanagement of our retirement finances will be this right here, and that has to do with what's your life expectancy. And certainly none of us know for sure how long we're going to live, but it's something that we do have to evaluate. And the reason for that is because of this word right here, inflation. Okay? Inflation is a reality. Now, the last several years, inflation has been rather high, but in the last 25 years, inflation has actually averaged at about 3% a year. Right now, it's been running 7, 8% for sure. But the point is, we have to make sure that we're planning on inflation occurring because it's simply going to. So when things are inflated, what we're doing is we're losing the spending power of our dollars. And so a very interesting article I saw recently talked about today, if a person says they need $50,000 to live on, in other words, that's their budget. In 20 years, at just average inflation, again 3% a year, they're going to need $90,000 a year. In 30 years, they're going to need $120,000 a year in income. And so the whole point is this, is we've got to include inflation in our numbers because life expectancy. So you're retiring at 65, and if you live to be 90, we're going to have to live 25 years without a job and without a paycheck. So again, we're going to have to manage those monies very well. So let's look at some of the average life expectancies today. If a lady makes it to the age of 65, average lady is going to make an 87, meaning half of them won't, half of them will live beyond that. And so, in fact, 34% of all ladies, now over a little over a third, are going to make it to 90 and beyond. So, again, life expectancy very, very high. Now, for men, a little bit lower, but still, a man makes it to 65, high likelihood that he's going to make it to 84 years old. So, again, he's going to live 19 more years, and possibility 16% of all men live beyond the age of 90. And so, my point is, be sure you're thinking about inflation as you talk about your retirement portfolio and what it's going to cost you and how you're going to make it through the retirement years for, again, another at least 19, 20, 25 plus years. All right, so that's what's going to cost us to retire. Let's talk about how are we going to pay for this retirement. And of course, everyone's going to be a little bit different, but let's just talk about some broad categories of funding a retirement. Some people are going to decide to continue to work, meaning they're maybe not going to work full-time, but they're going to work part-time. Or they're going to have an hourly job or maybe a consultant where they're going to get some fees. And so if that's going to be you, of course, you're going to put a number in here. Now, for most people, this is frankly going to be zero. They're retired. They don't want to go back to work even on a part-time basis. But if that's you, that'd be a source of income. And then pension. Now, the majority of people, in fact, I think less than 5% of all people that have just normal private sector jobs do not have a pension today. I think there's still about 75% of government jobs, state, federal, that will have a pension. But if you have a pension, certainly nice, guaranteed income. And so that's something you're going to have to put together here. So again, let's assume you're not working for the government, you don't have a pension because, again, they're very, very rare. For years, companies really took on the responsibility of providing for their employees long-term, way beyond just while they're working. And they had these defined benefit plans. And then that changed because companies just didn't like the risk of having to provide those funds till death. And so now we have defined contribution plans. And so we have other ways in which companies help, but it's certainly usually not through pensions. And then we have Social Security. Now, this is a big deal. All of us first have to know what our full retirement age is. If we take our Social Security before full retirement age, we lose about 6% a year, 0.5% a month. If we go to full retirement age, there's no reduction in Social Security. If we go beyond that and wait, those are called delayed retirement credits, we actually can grow that account by 8% a year. And really it all boils down to really what are our cash flow needs in retirement, but we need to make that decision and really make the right one. And so the point is that's a nice source of income. In fact, for I think right now about 40% of the population, that's all the income they have. But for others, of course, they're going to have other sources. But that's one we want to do. We want to make sure we just do the timing right on that Social Security decision. And then number 4, retirement accounts. And this is going to be your IRAs, your 401k plans, your 403b plans, things like that, your Roths, if you've done some Roth conversions, those types of things are your retirement funds that you've been setting aside, for the last 25, 30 years. And so those are very nice to have. Fifthly, then this is going to be our investments and savings. Now, most of this money, other than your Roth conversions, this is all still was pre-tax savings. So as we draw income from those sources, we're going to have to pay income taxes on them, not the Roths, of course. But this would be money that you really typically already pay taxes on. These would be your brokerage accounts, your stocks, your mutual funds, those kind of things. And now we're going to have a lower tax burden because now we just simply have to pay long-term capital gains taxes on those. Okay, so the whole point is this. We're looking to these sources of income for retirement. And some of you may still be an owner of a business, or you sold a business, or you're still getting some income from that, or you own real estate, a rental property, those kinds of things. So again, we're just looking at the different sources of our income because we know now what it's going to cost us, and now we're saying, how are we going to pay for this? All right, so as we look at all these different assets, I'm just going to make a couple suggestions that we would really call a correct way to allocate your assets in retirement. Let me share that with you, and we'll close. All right, so as we get into this illustration, I just want to preface this by this being one strategy that someone can use as they look at their retirement. We think this is, frankly, a very wise strategy, but again, you have to decide exactly how you want to fund your retirement. So I'm just simply sharing this with you because we think this is at least a good way to look at your retirement portfolio, proper withdrawals, and those kinds of things. So let's get started. First off, as we talk about these different buckets, we're saying that our money, all the money that we have that we've saved in the variety of our investments, are going to go in one of these three buckets. Okay, and so the first thing that we start off with, of course, would be the liquid bucket. And now, while you're still working, a lot of people call this the emergency fund. So if you lost your job and you'd like to certainly have some money set aside for maybe 6 months or a year so that you have time to go find another job. Well, we don't have jobs now. We're retired. And so we still, though, need to have some sort of a bucket that would be liquid. This would be money that would be designated for, just some kind of like short-term purchases. You know, you're going to buy a car, or you're going to take a certain vacation, or whatever you're going to be doing that you want, just liquid cash for that. This kind of money would certainly be in maybe a money market fund, some kind of a savings, but certainly at no risk at all, not any return either. But it's wise to have some kind of a liquid bucket that you can get to in case of an emergency or some kind of a special purchase you're going to make in the near term. All right, so that's some of our money, a little of it, but some. The second bucket I want to talk about would be our income. Now, when it comes to income, this is money that we're going to decide this is what's going to meet our budget. And so what most people suggest is you take a look at all your income sources that we just talked about. And let's just say, for sake of simplicity, that you're no longer going to work, you do not have a pension, and what you primarily here is going to have is Social Security. And let's say a husband and wife are going to retire at the same time, take Social Security benefits, and let's say they have a budget need of $7,000 a month, and they're going to get about $4,000 a month from their Social Security, and they're going to have a gap of $3,000. Okay, that $3,000 then is going to have to come from their assets, their retirement funds or their savings or investments, but some way they're going to have to draw that $3,000 income. And so our view is that when it comes to this need right here, we want to put money aside into a bucket that's going to give us income that is going to be guaranteed, meaning no risk. Because if my budget is $7,000, the last thing I want to have to do is to be able to reduce that or have to change my lifestyle. And so that's why we're saying here, we want it to be guaranteed income, just like your job was, just like pensions are. And so my whole point is in this bucket here, our big deal, we want to put money here where there's absolutely going to be really little or to no risk, actually, because there's investments that we can do that with. Now, this is a place where some people will actually use a product called a fixed index annuity. We can get some type of a return on that, and there's no risk to those at all, and it can generate income for us. Okay, and so again, we're not suggesting, and I wouldn't suggest putting a whole lot of money in this bucket, other than whatever we need to make sure that our needs are going to be met. All right, and so again, these are no risk, and it could be some other type of investment, but as long as there's little to no risk involved, we don't have to worry about our lifestyle being altered in case the market were, to really have a collapse for a couple years, or really to have maybe a bear market for some type of extended period of time. Okay, so the point is here, we want very little risk when it comes to my income. I want it to be guaranteed. Now, the last bucket then is really where we're going to put as much money as we possibly can. a little bit here, just to cover whatever our gap is for our income between Social Security and our budget. And over here, we want to load this up. And the reason we want to load this up is because this is where we're going to get our growth. Why? Because of inflation. If I need $50,000 a day, in 20 years I'm going to need 90. In 30 years I'm going to need 120,000. And so this is a place where we really protect ourselves from inflation, as well as taxes and rising healthcare expenses, including long-term care. Okay, so this is really where we get this hedge to protect ourselves. So again, we want to load this up. And so this is a place where I can have some risk. Some people in retirement want to have no risk, and they run really the possibility of running out of money or not living or really the way they would like to because they have to be so tight. And so we think risk is fine. So we don't want high risk, because if you have high risk investments, you could lose money, and actually, the company, so their stock could plummet, and you could have real hardship in your portfolio, especially if you had a lot of your eggs in one basket. And so all I'm trying to teach you is that here we do have to realize we're going to need to take on some risk. It needs to be calculated. It needs to be wise. We need to be very diversified in our investment portfolio, but it's all right to take risk. As long as my income needs are met over here that are guaranteed, Social Security and some kind of a product that will give me a guaranteed income, now I can afford it here. And so if the market's down, then I may have to cut back on some of my lifestyle things. I may not be able to take the whole family on a vacation this year. Market comes back the next year, sell something off the portfolio, and then we can take that particular vacation that we want to take. So here we're going to manage this based upon what's going on in the economy, because markets are volatile. But as a general rule, the stock market has performed very, very well over the long haul. All right. And so we want to certainly put money there, put as much as we can, because of the reality of inflation, taxes, and healthcare. All right, so this is the way we would suggest, at least as you work with your financial planner or us, whoever you're working with, at least be conscious that you do have these different buckets, and you want to put the right amount of money in each of the buckets.